There we go.
Welcome, everyone. The meeting will come to order at 3 o'clock in 50 seconds. First thing we're going to do is here. We're going to move to close this session to go into a closed session to review the minutes of the meetings of the closed session of the Heritage Advisory Committee special meeting held on March 30th, pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act. We're back in the open session at 3:03 p.m. So next is disclosure of pecuniary interest. Is there any? George or Don? No? All right. And approval of the agenda for this week. Any questions? Any additions or changes to the agenda? Okay.
Just need a mover and a seconder.
So yes, can I have a mover for approval of the agenda? Thank you. And George, seconder. Thank you. So do I have to say the agenda for the May 25th Heritage Advisory Committee has been approved? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Next is the approval of the minutes from the March 30th special meeting of the Heritage Advisory Committee. Resolution that the minutes of the Special Heritage Advisory Committee held on March 30th, 2026 be approved. I have a mover.
Let's go the other way.
George?
Actually, I don't think, that was the one I missed, wasn't it?
That's what
I did miss one meeting.
I'll have to check. I don't think.
All right, well, I move to accept it then.
Okay, and Don, second? Okay. Thank you. Is there any questions from the public? Oh, and further, that the minutes of the closed session Special Heritage Advisory Committee meeting held on March 30th, 2026 be approved. All in favor? Say aye. All right. Is there any public input? I don't see any. Is there any delegations or presentations? I don't see any. And then correspondence is next. So, Ms. Aseo, could you provide us with an update of the municipal property tax rebate?
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The program, I was advised by Ryan, the supervisor of tax. He's let me know that the program is intended to operate similarly to a charitable rebate program. So applications are typically due by the last day of February in the following taxation year. So it would be the last day of February 2027. Staff will begin accepting applications this summer, 2026, to facilitate early review and submission to MPAC. As this is the first year of the program, the city will be opening the application intake earlier than would normally occur in order to allow sufficient time for application review. And it will be open in the next month or two. Staff will also be working with communications to develop an online application form.
Okay, thank you. And that leads me to my next question, which relates to the heritage easement agreement. Will a heritage easement agreement be required first before the application, or is that part of the application process?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it will be part of the application process. It is being looked at by the tax department as well. They have made some changes to it, so that I'll get that back to the committee as soon as that's done.
Okay, thank you. Item number 10 is staff reports and other decision items. So the committee approval of the draft letters to owners of properties that may be designated. So over the last week, we sent you a copy of the revisions we were looking to complete, and if you can just update us on that, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did receive the proposal of the draft from the committee on Friday. Unfortunately, with time restrictions, I couldn't come up with a third draft. So the manager, Kelly, and I will review it, and we'll get back to the committee with a new draft for you to review.
Thank you. And waiting on that letter before we can, of course, follow up with item 10B, which is to go ahead and request that staff send out those letters to the property owners. We have had some discussions about the list, if you wish, of property owners. Do we discuss that out in the public here, I think? So gentlemen, perhaps you can just provide some comments about that, about the list of the recipient, the intended recipients of the first letter.
So, oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah, we've actually tried to populate a list to include not just Trenton buildings, but Quinte West, I think, would be the area that we're looking at. So we've added quite a number of other places, I think, to our list. And I think there's still more. So it's a matter really of getting the letter as soon as we can, and ideally at that point, when the letter is available, to have another meeting of the advisory committee to, I guess, do our final approvals, and then work on a process of publicizing the fact that there is a rebate that will be available, and what our process will be.
Thank you, George. Don, do you want to add anything?
Thank you. We were recognizing that the long list that we inherited had been generated quite some time ago, and that it would be partly through this process valuable for the city to have those letters go out. And so when those owners replied through the process, then we'd have a really up-to-date list of which properties were relevant, and especially those ones who were interested in pursuing the process. And that we would try to sweeten the pot by encouraging people that through the process they would learn more about their properties and come to value the land that they were, and the buildings that they were caretakers of.
Okay, thank you. And I wanted to also inform the committee and staff that I've done a bit more research on the list, and we have a lot of information available at the library that maybe, I'm not sure if staff is available, or sorry, I was aware of, but found a binder with all of the other properties that were shown as no information. There's actually a 2-page summary on each of those properties, but there's some errors in the dates or in the addresses. So I'm trying to compile a new list that would show clearly those properties that are currently designated, those that we are that have LACAC reports, and then those that have these partial LACAC reports. And just a few minutes ago, I came across a few other books. So we were wondering as a committee about how do we ensure that all of Quinte West is included in this process? Sydney Township and the Village of Frankfurt, and found a couple documents, including a nice history of the Village of Frankfurt with illustrations and really detailed information about the properties in Frankfurt, right from its origins. And based on this document, the town was very important, and it was named by for Sir Francis, I forget his name, but he was Bondhead, okay, former Lieutenant Governor. And then I also found one book on Sydney, 1790 to the 1990s, and then just came across 2 more books on Sydney a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if you gentlemen realize there was a town hall in Sydney, and currently there's a vacant park there to commemorate the former town hall of Sydney. So there's a lot of history all around us that we want to capture, and just around where I live as well, on Dundas, I've now, instead of just driving, I'm looking at the houses and thinking, wow, that looks like a really beautiful property that probably should be on the list. So if I may, would it be clear, would it be correct to say that we'd like to expand the list, and that our goal as a committee is to have everyone on that list receive a letter to gauge their interest, and that we then would take that summary of interest and develop a plan based on that, on what our next steps might be. So while the idea that initially we had about the low-hanging fruits, the projects or the properties that had LACAC reports, if we want to really be serious about designating more properties in Quinte West, I think we need a plan that would go to council that would include some financial issues. So if we knew that out of a list of, for example, 200 properties, 100 properties would like to be designated, what would that mean for council with respect to, first, the tax break, but also the amount of money it would take to do the research on those properties that don't have research. So I think the idea is to cast a wide net and then get that data together, collect the data, and then make a decision from that point, as opposed to just going out and getting 2 or 3 properties designated now. And partly we thought that doing so would create interest in the community, interest in the fact that those people who have properties now that are very interesting, that maybe should be designated, maybe don't know why their property should be designated, or they don't know the history of their property. And once they get this letter, they'll be more interested. So we would sort of create, hopefully, a group of people who would be really interested and maybe participate, maybe come to meetings, so we'd have somebody to talk to. But as well, create an interest more broadly throughout the community, so that the community understood that there are lots of properties here that could be designated. So I think, if I may, that's our goal, essentially, right? So, okay. So no decisions to be made there. I will just point out that I am updating our list and populating more data that I'll share with you, Ms. Aseo, later on, hopefully within a few weeks. Is there, wait, we had. Oh, sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, just so that we're clear on what staff will be doing, you don't want to pick any properties now that is on that list where we already have information and try and get those designated or listed and then designated. You want to hold off on that and just have a bigger list down the road. 2 concerns for me on that is again, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but we don't have a lot of resources. And I understand you want to do a plan that would talk about how you could maybe get a budget from council. But we're in an election year. And I don't anticipate that you would really get anything on the budget until maybe 2027, as well as the committee structure then gets redone after the new council comes on, and you're all welcome to put your names forward again, but there's no guarantee that you would get on the committee as well. So all the work that you've kind of started to do could go out the window. That's the only caution I say there for that.
Thank you. That's we had those thoughts as well, and what we thought was that if nothing else, we would have a plan in place. We knew we were unlikely to get some funding this year or this council term. So what we thought is we'd set it up for the next group to take over essentially, and really. One of our concerns was that it appears that maybe there's a lack of interest from council right now. I have spoken to a few councillors the last few days to explain to them what the issues are, and they said they'd like to hear more. So we think that the approach of instead of like here's 5 properties to designate, it's more like here's a couple hundred properties that are really valuable in our community that we should start to consider designating, and we'd like to develop a plan. And can we do this 5 per year, 10 per year, and then make a more, perhaps a better selection of which is more of a priority. There's always this question about those that can be easily designated that have LACACs now versus those that maybe are at risk of development. So one of the things that happened over the last few days is we were made aware of a building in Frankfurt that was demolished for a development. That we feel may have been a candidate for designation, or certainly was a candidate for research. And then we know about other properties that have been demolished or demolished as a result of fire, those kind of issues. So we're kind of worried that selecting 5 this year isn't the right step right now, that rather we need a whole review of the process and review of the available properties. And as I said, then hopefully turn over a plan that could go to the next committee, advisory committee, and then they can proceed with that however they may, and with whatever interest there might be from council. So on that note, or a separate item, I guess, I was going to ask staff for clarification perhaps on an issue. A couple years ago, there was a property that was renovated behind the Service Ontario building. And the Service Ontario building used to be the Gilmore building, and after that became a button factory. And I don't have it in my pocket here. During the construction, the excavation exposed the foundations of the warehouse or the workshop for the button factory, and pails and pails of old seashells with the holes cut out, and then also buttons that didn't make the cut. And all very important artifacts for our community, essentially. And what happened is that individual contacted, she said, the Heritage Committee or somebody, she wasn't sure who, and didn't get a response. And my concern there is how do we ensure that if a member of the public communicates with, I don't know, so do we as a committee have an email address, first of all? Is there something that, if the general public wanted to reach out to the committee, is there an email address related to the committee where we would get information from the public or questions from the public? Or does it go to staff? Is there like a staff email that says, Heritage at Quinte West or something like that? So I guess the question is, if someone, so I'm also involved with other properties that have archaeological issues as well, requiring research. So if someone were to start digging in our backyard for something and find artifacts, how would they approach that? What would be the process? What would they do, and who would they reach out to?
I believe that would just come through to the general planning at Quinte West email. I don't believe that there is a committee email, Heritage at Quinte West. It would just come through our department's email. and we would, in the planning department, be responsible for contacting if somebody was digging and found something, to contact the ministry, or else direct the property owner to contact the ministry themselves.
Okay, thank you. We as a committee were wondering about, and if maybe either of you gentlemen can remind me, because I'm on a blank here. We talked about having a brief newspaper ad. I think that was to support the fact those letters were going to go out. Is that right? Or?
The Quinte West has a page in the Trentonian, and if we could have something added to that page announcing the fact that we will be sending letters out to heritage properties, and I think that that would be a good way of communicating with the general public. It's very difficult, I know, to communicate with people these days.
Thank you, George. I remember now. Yeah, we were concerned that property owners may get letters and discard them, not understand what they're about, so that if we preceded that with an advertisement in the newspaper, that might be a way to make sure that they understood that the letter is important and they should read it. So I don't think we'd want to do that right now. I think we'll wait, but we'll put that as something to follow up with. I wanted to, I guess, ask staff, certainly some of the buildings that would be on the list, maybe residential properties that are leased out, that are either leased out or that they're apartments. So I assume you send the letter out not to the building, but rather to the property owner, which may be someone else. Okay, I just want to make sure of that. Is there any other business, gentlemen, you can think of?
Well, I have asked in the past if we could be informed when there was going to be a demolition. As Francis mentioned, the building in Frankfurt, it was one that I sort of looked at with the idea of, this is an interesting place, and I'd like to take some pictures of it. And 2 weeks later, I went to the site and it was gone. It, I believe, had some significance. It was probably a warehouse. It was situated right next to the train tracks. And that's the kind of thing that, at the very least, we should be able to record. If I don't think the intention is to stop demolition. I think it's just to be aware on the off chance that, for example, one of the buildings on our list, the post office tower, somebody applies to have it demolished, and one day I look up and it's not there. Is there any way that that information can be communicated to the committee on a regular basis?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say only if those properties were actually listed. If they're not listed, then the risk is that they can go ahead with their demolition. Which is also, again, I caution you that if you're not going to do anything with the current list that we have, or any properties that are on that, you are taking the risk that those properties could get demolished, renovated, anything like that, because they are not on any official list.
I think we had a concern prior that the way the legislation's been written now is that once a property goes on a list, we have a deadline that we have to meet. After that, it cannot be on the list for 5 years. So I think there's this question of having an internal list for our working list for ourselves. But if we, I'd have to check the regulations to see, but I feel like if we were to list the building in the next little while, that either the deadline will be January 1st, 2027, which the province is whispering may be extended, or it would be 2 years after it was put on the list. I think this is a variation on that issue. So it's damned if we do and damned if we don't in some ways, because the government's intention is that properties that should be designated must be designated, and properties that don't qualify to be designated should not be designated, should be removed off lists. So that's our challenge, and that's why I think we're looking to expand our list and to make a better selection moving forward. So thank you both for those comments. We had also talked at our informal meeting about the potential to have a booth or something like that at upcoming festivals, whether it's like a beer festival or a fishing festival, but there'd be just a little booth there that, you know, relates to the heritage. And I guess that's something that we would have to talk to council about to get some funding a little bit. Is there a process that you could, you know, any process we could follow to get something like that up and running? So like a tent with, you know, I don't think it'd be something that would happen this year, but in the future, a booth that would show a list of the designated properties, maybe have pamphlets that show the designated properties, and just to help make everyone aware that our community does have a lot of great history, and it's there for us to learn about, basically.
So we don't have any of that promotional information right now, so the committee is thinking they would develop something like that to have. So again, that would be a budgetary consideration to council. I certainly think of the pop-ups that are across in Centennial Park as a possibility for some displays and or handouts that could go, yeah.
And I think to add to that, the idea that where there are significant properties that have been demolished for fire or whatever other reason, I know that the Trentport Society has a lot of information on buildings that were demolished that aren't with us anymore, and that the idea might be that we could put a plaque up with an illustration saying this building used to be here and it was important because this person or this company was here. So again, something that's the promotional side, because in the end, we think we'll get more acceptance for designation, and we'll get more interest from council if the information is out there. And that's really what we thought was a weakness when we compared ourselves to other communities right now, that maybe we're not active enough in that side and the publicity of the heritage within the community. And notwithstanding what Trentport Society does, they do a really great job. But still, some people don't know they exist and that building is there, and that there's so much artifacts there as well. So thank you. Okay, if there's no further business, gentlemen, motion to adjourn, please. George and Don? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned at 3:29.